When they arrived at the hospital, they were greeted by the doctor and the nurse who had been taking care of Abdu. "Ah, gentlemen, thank you for coming," he said in a calm voice. "We've been taking good care of little Abdu, but we are glad you're here to take him home," the doctor said. Malik and Mikasi exchanged a warm smile. "Thank you, doctor. We are happy to finally meet Abdu." But Malik began, but he was interrupted by a thoughtful expression on the doctor's face. "Finally happy to meet Abdu, you mean?" Looking at Malik and Mikasi with a curious expression. Before Malik could respond, Abdu spoke up. "No, they are not my parents. My parents disappeared," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Malik and Mikasi, who Abdu later found out were cousins, exchanged a surprised glance. "Oh, I am so sorry to hear that, Abdu," Malik said. "Do you know what happened to them?" Abdu shook his head. "No, I don't know. They just disappeared one day. I was left with our neighbor, Mama Ada, in the village." Mikasi frowned. "That must have been very scary for you. Do you want us to take you back to the village? Maybe someone there can help you find your parents." But Abdu refused. "No, I don't want to go back to the village. I was unhappy there, and my parents weren't there anyway. Please don't take me there. Just wait a little bit until we are sure my mom is there." Malik and Mikasi exchanged uncertain looks. This was the first time they had heard that Abdu had no parents in the village they were planning to take him back to. "Okay, Abdu," Malik said gently, "we won't take you back to the village, but we need to ask you something. Would you be okay living with us until we find your parents?" Abdu looked up at them with a hint of surprise, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess so. I don't have anywhere else to go." Understanding the situation, the doctor recommended that Malik and Mikasi sign a letter with their address to confirm that they have taken the child but are in the process of locating his parents. The doctor also advised them to visit the nearest police station and provide a statement to that effect. Once this was completed, the doctor handed Malik and Mikasi a folder containing Abdu's medical information and some instructions. "He's a healthy boy, but he's been through a lot. Just make sure to take good care of him," he said. "Please make sure he gets plenty of rest and eats well." Malik and Mikasi nodded, taking the folder and thanking the doctor. "Thank you so much, doctor. We will do our best." Then they turned to Abdu and said, "Okay, buddy, let's get you out of here and take you home." Abdu smiled slightly, looking a bit more excited now. Malik and Mikasi helped him get dressed and gathered his belongings. Back in the hospital where Abdu's mother was being treated, Abdu's mother had shown significant improvement in her condition. She had woken up from a coma and was on a slow path to recovery, struggling with instability and the loss of her child. Despite the unwavering support from hospital staff, she remained a mere shadow of her former self. During her stay at the hospital, she, however, formed meaningful connections with fellow patients. One of these bonds was with Roslyn, a middle-aged woman who not only ran several restaurants in the city but was also kind-hearted. Roslyn was admitted for high blood pressure at the hospital, and this was her 4th week. Roslyn often accompanied Abdu's mother on tranquil strolls in the hospital, providing her solace and companionship. On the day Abdu was being discharged from the hospital, Roslyn came to take Tamara for a walk as usual. By the way, Both Tamara and Abdu were in the same hospital, but neither of them knew that. As Abdu, Malik, and Mikasi walked into the hospital corridor, Abdu spotted someone who looked like his mother from a distance. He told Malik, "That looks like my mother over there." Malik looked at him, surprised, and asked, "What could she be doing here?" Before he finished speaking, Abdu was already running towards Tamara and Roslyn, calling out, "Mother! Mom! Mother! Wait!" He approached them and was overjoyed to see her, almost grabbing her dress. However, as he got closer, he realized that she didn't recognize him. She looked at him with a blank expression, her eyes vacant. Abdu cried out desperately, trying to reach his mother. "It's me, Abdu, your son." But she just stared at him. Confusion etched on her face. Tamara looked at the small boy with surprise. She whispered to Roslyn, "Poor soul, he must have mistaken me for his mother." She knelt at Abdu's eye level and gently said, "Sweet young man, I wish I was your mother. I just lost my baby. Your mom should be somewhere around, I'm sure. Please keep searching. You will find her, and all the best." Malik, Mikasi, and Roslyn watched with surprise as the situation unfolded. Roslyn asked Tamara, "Tamara, you've never mentioned having a child. Did you leave a child behind when you came to the hospital?" Tamara hesitated, her mind wandering back in time. After what felt like an eternity, she replied, "No, I had a husband, but he left me and went to the city." Abdu's heart sank as tears flowed from his big eyes, realizing that his mother had forgotten him. Then he broke down in tears and ran to Malik. The hospital staff intervened and asked Abdu, "What is your mother's name?" Abdu replied, "Mommy." "She is Mommy. I always called her Mommy. We never address old people by their names." The two nurses then explained to Malik, Mikasi, and Roslyn that Tamara, Abdu's mother, was still recovering and that her memory was fragile. They promised to slowly talk to Tamara and see what she remembers. Then they asked them to leave their address so that they could contact them to help the young Abdu reunite with his mother in case Tamara turned out to be his mother. As Abdu walked away with Malik and Mikasi, he was so heartbroken that he kept looking back and crying. He thought to himself, "I have finally found my mother, but she didn't know who I was. Oh, could it be that the woman resembles my mom? My mom can never forget me, no." Tears welled up in Abdu's eyes, mixed with an expression of pain that no child should ever bear. As they left the hospital, Abdu looked up at them with curious expression and asked, "Where are we going?" Malik smiled and said, "We are going to our home, where you'll be safe and happy. It's also near the hospital, so we can come back and check. Maybe the lady you said is your mother is actually your mother, and she'll remember you after some time. We'll show you around and introduce you to our friends, and maybe you'll also make other friends." Abdu nodded, looking a bit more at ease. As they walked to the car, Mikasi asked him, "Hey Abdu, are you hungry? We can stop for some food on the way to the police before we get home." Abdu's eyes lit up. "Yeah, I'm starving," he exclaimed. After grabbing a bite to eat, they went to the police station to file a report and then headed home. "Don't worry, Abdu. We'll take good care of you. We'll make sure you're safe and happy until we find your parents," Mikasi told him. Abdu's eyes lit up with hope and he smiled slightly. "Really? You do that for me? Malik and Mikasi nodded in unison. Of course, Abdu. We are in this together now. As Abd arrived at Mikasi and Malik's home, he was struck by the stark contrast to his village. The house boasted beautiful long windows that let in plenty of natural light, tiled floors that gleamed underfoot, and modern art adorning the walls. The furniture in pristine white exuded an air of opulence and comfort. Upon entering, Abd couldn't help but express his astonishment, whispering, "Wow, is all this yours?" Mikasi nodded and warmly welcomed Abd, letting him know that from that day forward, the house would also be his home. As they sat together, Mikasi and Malik introduced themselves with warm smiles. They assured Abdu that they were there for him. Abd nodded silently, taking in every detail of the house as if committing it to memory. Shortly after, they led Abd to a welcoming guest bedroom with a comfortable bed. As they closed the door behind him, they encouraged Abd to join them whenever he was ready. Overwhelmed by the day's events, Abd collapsed onto the bed and quickly drifted into a deep and peaceful sleep, but with tears rolling down his small cheeks. Turning to Kuso, Abdu's father, Kuso had been living in the city all this time as these events occurred, but his life had taken a turn for the worse. He started living with a woman one his friends introduced to him, and who turned out to be his employer. This woman, known as Lydia, had seemed lovely at first, but turned out to be manipulative and cruel. One day, when they had a misunderstanding, she took all the money that Kuso had saved up and eventually chased him away. With no job, no money, and no friends, Kuso had nowhere to go back to but his village. He packed his bags and began the long journey home, feeling defeated and humiliated. Exhausted and defeated, Kuso arrived in the village of Kamuli after traveling for days, hoping to reunite with his family, hoping that Tamara and Abdu were still there waiting to receive him with happy hands. However, as he entered the village, he was met with an area of silence. The usual bustle of activity was absent, and the few people he saw seemed to be avoiding him. He expected to find his wife and son waiting for him, but to his surprise, they were nowhere to be found. He asked around, but no one seemed to know where they were. Kuso's heart sank. He had been so sure they would be there. He felt like he had lost everything: his family, his home, and his dignity. But more so, he was surprised by his friends in the city. They liked him when he had money, but as soon as the money ran out, no one cared about him. Even when he asked them to give him accommodation after the other woman Lydia had chased him away, they all turned a blind eye. Kuso gathered courage and made his way to the chief's house. He had expected a warm welcome, but instead, he was greeted by the chief's wife, who looked at him with a mixture of disgust and anger. "Kuso, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice firm but controlled. "I've come to find out if you know anything about my family," Kuso replied, his eyes scanning the surrounding area. The chief's wife shook her head. "You are too late, Kuso. Your wife and son are gone. Your wife followed you to find you the day you left home. She never returned. We thought you guys were together. And your son, whom your wife had left with Mrs. Ada, disappeared." Kuso's eyes widened in shock. Where did they go? The chief's wife shrugged. I don't know. But you need to leave, Kuso. You are not welcome here anymore. Kuso felt a surge of anger and frustration. I demand to see the chief, he shouted. Fine, she said, but don't say I didn't warn you. The chief, a stern-looking man with a thick beard, listened to Kuso's pleas with a disinterested expression. Kuso, you abandoned your family. You left them to fend for themselves and traumatized your son to an extent that he fainted on the roadside. Why should I help you now? Kuso felt a wave of shame wash over him. He knew he had made mistakes, but he had never intended to hurt his family. Please, Chief, he begged. I never intended to hurt my family. I'll do anything. Just tell me where they are, anything you know, anything you heard. The chief shook his head. Abdu got lost after your wife followed you, Kuso. Kuso's heart raced. Abdu? Lost? My wife? Gone where? I have never seen her. He felt like he was living a nightmare. You are on your own, and please leave my compound. I don't want to see men like you in my village. You are a disgrace. Kuso walked down, his head bent, and left the chief's compound. As the sun began to set, Kuso found himself alone, wandering the empty village streets. He had nowhere to go, no friend to turn to. He had lost everything, his family, his home, and more importantly, his dignity as a father. He went back to his hut, which now was in a very bad shape. He just lay there staring in the space the whole night. Back in the city, Malik and Mikasi, after ensuring that Abdu had fully recovered, decided to go to his village. As they journeyed to the village one Saturday morning, they were determined to find answers about Abdu's parents. However, their trip was not without challenges. After a few hours of driving, they encountered a massive landslide that blocked the road. No way, Malik exclaimed, getting out of the car to assess the situation. We can't get through here. Mikasi joined in, and they both stared at the rubble-strewn road. We'll have to turn back, Mikasi said, disappointed. Malik nodded, and they reluctantly got back in the car and headed home. Abdu was waiting for them when they returned, curious about their trip. Hey, uncles, how was the village? Did you see my mom? Is my father there? Abdu asked. Noticing their somber expression, Malik and Mikasi exchanged a glance. We didn't make it, buddy, Malik said gently. We didn't make it, buddy, Malik said gently. There was a landslide on the way and we couldn't get through. We are so sorry, so sorry. Abdu's face fell, but he quickly rebounded. That's okay. We'll try again, right? Malik and Mikasi smiled, impressed by Abdu's resilience. Kiddo, Mikasi said, we'll figure out another way to get to the village and find out about your parents. Don't worry, relax for now. We also need to go back to the hospital to check on the lady you said is your mother. Abdu, on the verge of tears, exclaimed, She's truly my mommy. I can feel it. Not just someone I think is. Uncle? Malik responded, You're right, kiddo. You're right. She is your mommy, and I think she might have been sick and forgotten you. But that is going to be worked out. Do not worry. We're going to go and see her. A few weeks passed, and Abd continued to stay with the two cousins and they even enrolled him in school. They loved him very much and cared for his every need. One sunny evening, as Malik and Mikasi sat in their lounge, Abd overheard them discussing something about taking him to his village, in the hope that he would help them locate his parents. He didn't quite catch the whole conversation, but thought they wanted to take him and leave him there. Abdu, feeling scared about his past experiences, did not want to return to the village unless he was sure his mother was there. And that night, before dawn, Abd quietly left Mikasi and Malik's home with a backpack and disappeared. He was determined to establish whether the woman he met in the hospital was his mother or not. He did not want to go to the village because he was convinced his mother was the same person in the nearby hospital and he didn't want to leave her behind. Abdu, early that morning, then managed to board a taxi, and after negotiating a free ride, the conductor kindly took him to the city center where he left him. Abdu repeatedly asked people for directions to a nearby hospital, trying as much as possible to get to the hospital and see Tamara. But unfortunately, when they asked him for the name of the hospital, Abdu didn't know what the name was. All he knew was that it was located off the main road and it had blue and white doors. Then night fell and Abdu had not found the hospital. He decided to go to the taxi rank. Maybe he could get a taxi that goes back to Malik and Mikasi. But Abdu did not know how to get back to Malik and Mikasi's home. So he decided not to get into any of the taxis for fear of getting lost at night. He said to himself, I will wait till morning and try again. Abdu then encountered some young children on the streets and swiftly befriended them. That night and the nights after, Abdu started living with the kids on the street. The older boys assisted travelers by carrying their luggage in return for money, while the younger ones cleaned nearby restaurants and washed dishes in exchange for food and a place to stay. The children used to wait until everyone had left, and then they would sleep in the tiny restaurant store that could accommodate them. The manager had allowed them to stay but asked them to leave early in the morning so the owner wouldn't find them there. Abdu then spent some time at the restaurant, and with the help of one of the street boys, his friend, they looked for the hospital where his mother was admitted. He visited 3 different hospitals, but none of them were the right one. The situation was very intense, and Abdu's emotional anguish was obvious. He felt like he was losing his mother all over again, and he didn't know how to find her. The morning after Abdu left Malik and Mikasi's home, they woke up early to take him to school. However, they couldn't find him in his bedroom or anywhere in the neighborhood. Then they decided to start with the hospital, thinking he might have gone back there to look for the lady he said was his mother. To their surprise, they found out that the lady, who we know now as Tamara, had escaped 2 days ago. Malik and Mikasi were shocked and confused at the same time. Why did the lady escape from the hospital? Anyway, they decided to first to go to the village where they had found Abdu, and it is after that that they will report the case to the police if Abdu kept on missing. Then they prepared to leave for Abdu's village in Kamuli the following day. Roslyn who was Tamara's friend at the hospital, was discharged a week before Tamara escaped. As she left, she gave Tamara her phone numbers and some money to use. She asked her to call her in case she needed anything or to come over to the city for a visit. Tamara carefully kept her numbers safe and said to herself, "Just in case, let me keep it, you never know." So a week later, Tamara escaped from the hospital and headed back to Kamori. Tamara arrived home in the evening, and to her surprise, the house was open. She walked into the house wondering who could be there, and to her surprise, it was Kuso. Kuso looked at her with an angry face, and without greeting her, he asked her, "Where is Abdu?" "Abdu? Who is Abdu?" Kuso could not believe his ears. He gave Tamara a sharp look and told her, "Tamara, I'm not here to play games with you. Where is my child?" She responded, "I had a miscarriage." Kuso shouted, "You had a miscarriage of a 7-year-old boy? Are you stupid?" Before she could say anything, he had already slapped her. Tamara screamed as she fell on the floor. Then Mrs. Ada heard the screams and ran to their house. She found Tamara on the floor crying and Kuso kicking and screaming at her. "Tamara, where's my child? You stupid woman!" Mrs. Ada screamed and the villagers gathered and saved Tamara from Kuso's beating. Kuso was then taken to the chief's local prison and locked away. After taking Tamara to her house, Mrs. Ada cleaned her up nicely and asked her to rest for a while. As Tamara slept, Mrs. Ada had a car outside Tamara's house. And when she went to check, she saw 2 men, Malik and Mikasi, who had been directed to Abdu's home by a neighbor of their 72-year-old in-law who had passed away the day they took Abdu to the hospital for the first time. Malik and Mikasi were still in shock to learn that their in-law had passed on and they did not know. But then they decided to see Abdu's home first and come back to their in-law's place to mourn her after. "Ma'am, can we see the owner of this house? Do you know where they are?" Mikasi asked Mrs. Ada. And after some hesitation, Mrs. Ada told them that we have just had a situation here, but please come to my house and let us talk from there. As they prepared to enter to sit, they saw Tamara, the woman they met at the hospital and who Abd said was his mother, sitting down on a mat. Their hearts froze. They glanced at each other and quickly, without saying a word, each made the connection that this was actually Abdu's mother. So, back in the city, Abdu decided to take matters into his own hands and visit a local radio station. The radio host, a young lady of about 25 years, looked closely at Abdu. He was thin with messy hair and clothes that appeared unwashed for weeks. She said, "Hello, young man. How can I be of help?" He asked if she could broadcast a message about his lost parents, hoping someone might come forward with information. The radio host said, "Yes, of course, but first, let me give you something to eat." Later on, she interviewed him on air and Abdu shared his story, including the hospital encounter with his mother, who said she did not have a child. Abdu narrated the story as his voice trembled with emotion. So as they walked out of the studio an hour later, A middle-aged lady with a sweet voice spoke to the radio presenter from a distance in the corridor. "My dear daughter, sorry, I'm interfering with your work today. I forgot to take my house keys and I can't get into our house. Can I borrow yours?" The radio presenter, recognizing her mother's voice, turned around. "Oh, yes, mother. Anytime, no worries." The lady walked closer to her and looked at Abdu. She asked her, "Where did you get this young handsome man?" Before she could respond, Abdu recognized her as the lady who was with her mother in the hospital, Auntie Roslyn. He asked, "Ma'am, were you sick some time back in the hospital?" She hesitated and then answered, "Yes, I was." And as she looked closer, she recognized Abdu as the boy who confronted her friend Tamara and said she was his mother. Concerned with the coincidence, she took her daughter to the side to get the full story regarding Abdu. Her daughter told her that Abdu had come to make an announcement looking for his parents and that he mentioned the hospital scene as well. Without saying another word, Roslyn walked over to where Abdu was left standing. "Hi," Roslyn said softly, kneeling to get on Abdu's level. "My daughter here has just told me you are looking for your parents and everything you have narrated on the radio. If you don't mind, I can also help." And with tears starting to form in his eyes, Abdu replied, "I will be very grateful, Ma'am. But first, where do you stay?" Roslyn asked. Abdu told her about the restaurant where he was staying, which was across the road from where they were standing. Then Auntie Roslyn realized it was one of her restaurants which she did not frequent because the manager there was more than capable of running it without her supervising every day. Then she gave him another look and asked him if he would like to go with her to her house, clean up and get some clothes. And then they could continue to talk and also wait there in case her daughter got a response from the radio interview they broadcasted that day. "Tomorrow," Auntie Roslyn said, "then we can start looking for your parents together, Abdu. What do you think?" Abdu looked at both Auntie Roslyn and the radio presenter for a long moment, his eyes full of conflict. But finally he nodded slowly. "Okay." Abdu was overcome with happiness and began to express his gratitude to Auntie Roslyn. Tears streaming down his face and his small body shook with emotion. Without hesitation, Auntie Roslyn enveloped Abdu in a warm hug and reassured him, saying, "Everything will be okay, my dear boy. Don't worry." Auntie Roslyn gently repeated Abdu's name while stroking his untidy hair. "It's okay to cry. You've been through a lot." They stayed in this embrace for several minutes, with Auntie Roslyn providing comfort as Abdu released months of loneliness and suffering through his tears. Calmly, everyone fell silent when Mrs. Ada addressed Malik and introduced Tamara as the resident of the house the two men had come to. Although Tamara offered to leave so they could talk, Mrs. Ada encouraged her to stay. "Stay on. I think these men have something to say to you." The two men proceeded to recount everything about Abdu from the day they first brought him from the village until he disappeared from them. Then they even talked about going to the hospital to look for Abdu, and that is where they found out that Tamara had left the hospital without being discharged. It was only at this point that Tamara asked who Abdu was, leading Mrs. Ada and the two men to realize that she had lost her memory. Mrs. Ada joined the conversation and confirmed that she knew Abdu and that Tamara was his mother. Then Tamara explained to everyone there that she actually had been in the hospital and sick for some time after getting into an accident, and she actually recognized Malik and his cousin. Then Mrs. Ada quickly ran to the chief and explained everything and informed the chief that he would be going with Tamara because she didn't seem well and that the two men were there and willing to help look for Abdu in the city. They then left the village a few days later after the two men had paid their respects to their fallen in-law. Thank you so much for listening to the second part of The Forgotten Child. And if you found value in this story, please like and subscribe. As we get to the final and last part of The Forgotten Child, which is coming very soon, of course, please let us know, what do you think will happen to Abdu and his mother? Will she be able to recognize him finally? Be so blessed.